Hello, heathens. I'm Wild Violet,
And I'm transvangelical.
and this is Not Safe for Worship. Here, we talk about the ethics of sex work and sexuality in general through the lens of post-religious trauma. These are deeply personal topics for us, and we strive to delve in with humor and respect, but we do discuss very sensitive and potentially triggering subjects on a regular basis. Please practice self-care and compassion. Take breaks or even stop listening if you need to. We care deeply about you and your well-being.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Not Safe for Worship, the podcast where we say the things that you weren't allowed to say when you were younger. Probably would have got your mouth washed out with soap or something, because that's not abusive behavior. I am Alicia, or transvangelical, and I have a co-host.
I'm Wild Violet. I'm so glad you're here. I absolutely did have my mouth washed out with soap, by the way. By washed out, I mean if it was a bar of soap, I had to actually chew and swallow. If I was brushing my teeth with it, it was dish soap. And let me tell you right now, like you look at all the colors of dish soap that, as a child, that are like so fun and interesting, and you think to yourself, the blue one has to taste better than the yellow one. Like the blue one has to be better, right? No, it's not. The blue one is terrible. The yellow is better. So if your parents are prone to making you brush your teeth with dish soap, always try and sway them towards the yellow. I don't know much about the rest of the flavors, to be honest. You can test it out if you want.
But also, if you're in a position where your parents might wash your mouth out with soap and listening to this podcast, that you might be too young, or you might need to move out of your parents' house.
It's time.
Yeah. It's time. But for multiple reasons, yeah.
Well, if you ever decide that you want to brush your teeth with dish soap, like you just really need that squeaky clean, like the penguins from the commercial, you think maybe you got some grease up in there, you're gonna want the yellow, not the blue.
Which makes sense, because yellow tends to be lemon, and I think they generally use lemon extract, whereas the blue doesn't have any fruit extract in it, I don't think.
Just like blue dye number, I don't know, the number's 12.
Sure. I mean, I saw a yellow dye like 162, so it's like there's apparently a lot.
A lot of yellows. I don't know if my eye can perceive that many yellows.
I don't think. Yeah, probably not.
Or my taste buds, honestly. So
I can't tell the difference between different yellow dyes.
I really can't. I'm not that advanced yet. I'll get back to you.
Perfect. Well, anyways, in this week's episode, we are going to be talking about a topic that I think a lot of people kind of know this, but there is actually research to back it up, which is the fact that if you are given a shame sexual ethic, you have an increased likelihood of being a victim of sexual assault, and you actually have a higher chance of sexually assaulting others. It's technically not it could still technically fall into correlation isn't causation, but it's like the indications are pretty solid.
Absolutely. I think, and whether we can say that is something that statistically is happening to like most people or not, we can say that this is a phenomenon that we have witnessed, where being given an ethic of shame has actually led people to do more shameful things. We know that this at least happens sometimes, and so we want to just kind of discuss that problem, why it's a problem, why the sexual shame ethic actually does the opposite of what it's intended to do, right? It's the idea is don't look at that because it's shameful, but what it actually does is primes us to look at it in a shame-filled way and to not know how to process it. So it's those people end up those people also me. I was one of those people that was raised that way. You can end up being attracted to all kinds of things, and you can find yourself in a world that you don't know how to navigate. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, and if you need like a case in point of this, just Google Josh Duggar.
Oh my God.
If you don't know who that is, because he is a prime example of this. Maybe to the extreme, because I would maybe venture to say his issues being the firstborn in that like messed up type of family where he is perceived to be the second authority after his father probably set him up with a different even power dynamic. But yeah, on top of that, he had a shame view of sexuality and did a lot of really messed up stuff to include eventually being arrested for child pornography.
Awful.
Which is not a good term. I need to not use that term because there is no such thing as child pornography. There is child sexual abuse material.
Yep. That's, yes, absolutely correct. That's an important distinction, I think. And the analogy that comes to my mind immediately when we're talking about things like this is like, it's kind of like, I think of prohibition, right? So it's not like when they outlawed alcohol went away. People had to find more dangerous, sneaky ways to get it. And they might have gotten in trouble for it, and it wasn't regulated, but it didn't just disappear. It just became an underground thing. The same is true of so many different things that we try to outlaw and regulate. And when we say just don't look at it, and I think that's what, it's a similar thing that happens a lot of times to people who are told, no, all of that entire world is off limits. Then they come to it thirsty, and the only option that they have is underground and hidden and sneaky, and so you're not by giving someone shame about something, you're not preventing them doing it. You are just changing their mindset as they approach it. And someone who walks into their sexuality full of shame, that can go a lot of different ways. But you are setting them up for things like potentially predatory behaviors or victimhood because they don't know what's appropriate.
Exactly. And what's interesting is the research backs this up to include an article that I found published by Liberty University. Granted, their conclusions, like when something has to be like really true for Liberty to like admit that religious shame around sexuality has a negative effect on people.
Oh, that's huge. Liberty is one of the most conservative. Liberty University students that live in the dorms, I don't know if they still do this, but when I was in college, this is how it went. If you decide that you're going away for the weekend, you have to leave the address and the phone number of the person that you're staying with so your RA can call and check up on you and make sure you're not with someone you're not supposed to be with. You have to sign contracts that you won't dance like during the summer. I mean, Liberty is very conservative. So if they're, let's listen to this. I'm intrigued.
Basically, they admitted in a paper, and then they go on to kind of double down on their Christian views. But they admitted in this paper that religious sexual shame does stunt one's own development of their sexual self. And which is so significant because, I mean, especially like when we're teenagers and we are supposed to, this is when our body is like going through those changes that kind of develops our sexual self, we aren't
Mhm.
given the tools for like our brain development to actually match our
Mm-mm.
like physical hormonal development.
Mm-mm.
And so our foundation on our sexual self is being hindered by a religious shame culture.
Think about think about the correlations in a young brain. Think about like the emotional toll that that takes, right? You're going through those, that your body's starting to wake up, you're starting to feel all these things, and people are saying, "Don't listen to that. That's bad.
Mhm.
That's gross. That's wrong. Don't touch yourself. Don't don't touch your own body. That's dirty. That's gross." But you, of course, are a human being, and I'm sure this isn't like an overarching experience, but for a lot of us, um, we're still going to end up touching ourselves and
Oh
thinking
yeah.
about these things, and like, we can't help it, we're thinking about, that's what our body is designed to do, and we're exploring it.
Mhm.
But that means that now every time we do that, we have a voice in our head telling us that this is dirty, that our pleasure is wrong, that all of this is gross. But we also know that we can't prevent it and we can't stop it, so we keep doing it and we keep feeling guilt about it. But we've just accepted that guilt and shame is part of the process of pleasure. And so once you
Absolutely.
have accepted that guilt and shame just goes along with pleasure, if you're looking at something and you feel guilt and shame and it's because it's really problematic, you don't know the difference.
Yeah, you've already trained your brain that is how it's done.
That's how it's supposed to feel.
And yeah, and so like for me, whenever I was that age and I just discovered touching myself, nobody had actually ever told me about it. The first time that I actually masturbated, I had no idea what happened. And like I
Right. Yeah, I
ejaculated
didn't
and
either.
I had no idea that a penis could ejaculate. Like
Yeah.
that's like how sheltered I was, but at the same time, I know I'm not the only person that went through that
Uh-uh.
because that I'm sure that's a common experience.
There's so much on the other side of it. There's so much that we don't know about our bodies. I talk to so many people, so many girls in like high school or college or whatever within the Christian church, that it was like, "Well, have you ever masturbated? Have you ever had an orgasm?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know if I've ever had an
I,
orgasm." And I'm like, "You would know, right?" Or I'd be one time I was on a mission trip, and we're trying to go swimming, and so this girl's on her period. She really needs to use a tampon. And this happened multiple times with like people in high school. I'm standing outside the door trying to coach her using her tampon for the first time. She's like, "I can't." And I said, "Well, are you putting it into the right hole?" And she's like, "What do you mean the right hole? I'm not putting it in my butt. There's only one." And I was like,
oh no,
and we're talking like sophomores in high school. Like, we are not
yeah,
given this
yeah.
lens. And so we don't even know how to interact with our bodies. And so, we get the things that we don't know. Like, that's wild.
It is so wild. And honestly, because I like reached a place where um my I didn't understand what masturbation was, and because of things that were like told to me, because everything was told in such a cryptic way, that I
Mhm.
thought my inability to stop masturbating, which I was just going through a teenage boy puberty or a male puberty because I didn't know I was trans, and even if I was, would probably have been still forced to go through a male puberty. But
Mhm.
I convinced myself that I must be gay and I'm going to hell, and
Aw.
that I had to stop because I'm touching a penis, right? Like if you are excited to touch a penis, whether it's yours or not, clearly you have to be gay, right?
Yes. Okay, this is so I actually, oh my god, you just gave me this flashback. I took a class in college that was on Romans, and there's a passage in there that talks about like the way that their lust turned and they became like overcome
Oh,
with
that one,
with
yes.
desire for the people who look like them or whatever, right? And so we got into this conversation where my professor was talking about how like the problem with homosexuality is that it's actually about self-worship, and the fact that
Oh my goodness.
you're like lusting after and attracted to what looks like you, self-obsession kind of. And it
Mhm.
that's and so yeah, like and so then I can see that thought process, that underlying like thread when you're like, "Oh, well, if I touch my penis, I must be gay because I liked a penis.
Mhm.
It's like
Yep.
your own body is being
It's
othered
been used
from
against
you
you.
in such a
Oh,
way
yeah, and
that you
othered.
can't. It's what?
Yeah. And so, I mean, these are like small things that I'm kind of remembering like right now in the moment.
Right?
Because thinking about this wasn't premeditated before this podcast. Uh, but that just so much adds to the shame because you don't understand like what you're feeling. You don't understand that your body is actually okay. It's okay for you to enjoy your body. Like you have a meat suit for your entire life. You might as well get something out of it, right? So like there's no way to actually sort through this other than the only tool that we were given, which was shame. The only way that we had to work through our feelings was feeling bad about it.
Yep. And trying to decide, like, am I just kind of an uncontrollable sinner and I'm going to do this thing because it feels good and ask for forgiveness? Or am I going to resist the urge to experience pleasure?
Yeah. And also,
That's what you're
like, I
set
went
up
to,
with.
yeah, that's what you're set up with. I went to high school when Passion of the Christ came out. So, I mean, I'm sure that date puts a time frame for my age right there. Um, and so, like, on top of that, we have like super,
I saw that
super,
movie in theaters
yeah, I did too.
5 times, I think.
I think I only watched it twice. Yeah. But yeah, on top of that, we like fetishized the violence against Jesus as this is your sin. Jesus went through this for you, and because you masturbated. I mean, that's not what they said, but like that was my biggest sin, right? Or I was being told that was my biggest sin, and that I couldn't get over it, and that like Jesus went through all of this, and it doesn't matter because you can't stop doing this. And it's such a messed up way to have your existence as a teenager like weaponized against you.
And it's not fair or biblically accurate. This, brings to mind something for me. My life changed in college when I learned for the first time the translation of "it is finished" in the Gospel of John. I always thought, reading that it was just kind of this, like, it's finished, I'm done now, I'm tired, I'm gonna die, and then he hangs his head and dies, right? But when I understood the language behind it, the tetelestai, and the fact that that word actually means paid in full, that it means, when someone was released from prison, they would stamp this on their paperwork. When someone paid their taxes in full, they would stamp this on their paperwork to signify, like, something has been fully accomplished. Nothing can be added to or taken from it. And so the picture that the Bible gives us of the cross and of Jesus being put on the cross and of the torture that he endured is this picture of the temple curtain tearing in two. And the whole point is that that's done now. And yet, as Christians, we are obsessing with what we did that put him up there. The whole point of the gospel is the gift, is the fact that he is the curtain tore and he got off the cross and he came back. Like, and now you get second life. And so it's really interesting the way that we are wielding Jesus's suffering against people, especially youth, to get an emotional response out of them. Look at what you're doing to Jesus, when what Jesus himself said was, it's already done. Let's move on.
Yeah. I was going to pull up an old video, but I can't find it. The place that had it up took it down, which
Because
was
when he said it is finished, I believe that he meant it.
oh no, not that.
Is that the one?
That would
Okay,
be
because that's where I
no.
got it.
I mean that. Yeah, if I go down that rabbit hole on like Christian theology, we're going to be there for a while, because it is finished like literally means like there isn't like nothing more can be done.
Nothing can be added to it. It's paid in full, finished, done, finito. It's over. You can't revisit it. The end.
Yeah. And so it's, and then we developed Christian theology that is very, like, as much as people say we're saved by faith, which I didn't grow up in a denomination that said that, which we're gonna get into later. They still require certain things, and not masturbating
You're saved
is
by faith, but you demonstrate your faith through works. Thanks, James.
The thing is, James wasn't even talking about that type of stuff. James is like, yeah, you have faith. Take care of the poor.
Exactly. But the way that we
take care of the poor. Yeah. Like the book of James is all about like the rich are evil. That's the summary of it.
The book of James is beautiful, and it's also correct. Like, intent does not override impact. But for some reason, the Christians got in here and they were like, oh, demonstrate your faith through works. And I don't know how that got turned into like, don't masturbate, because what it actually meant was like, care for your neighbor. But the things that we can run with, the mental gymnastics, I can't.
Exactly.
I don't even know how I was able to do those kinds of mental gymnastics for all those years. It must have been because I was so young and like spry, because these days it's just exhausting.
I'm gonna attempt to find this video one last time, but I'm gonna talk while I'm looking for it. Because it is the most I don't know. Like, do you know, did we talk about Triple X Church? It was either on this podcast or maybe on Go Home Bible.
Did we? Jog my memory.
It's kind of like Covenant Eyes, where they started as like an accountability software, and they have some other like
accountability software. Listen to the things that Christians say. I'm so sorry.
It literally sends an email of all the links that you went to that might be questionable, and you have to click on them to see it. Like,
accountability software. I don't know why that just really hit me today. Like,
that's fine.
That is a whole new level of Christianese that I was not ready for.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Nope, that's still not it.
Covenant Eyes, and then Triple X Church or something.
Yeah. And Triple X Church had a free version, so like that was my go-to, because I didn't,
accountability should be free and easily accessible.
Yeah. Yep. And then they created Triple X Church Pro. So here's the weird thing. The person who started Triple X Church now runs the website Christian Cannabis and sells marijuana.
The Triple X Church, what's their like app icon? I have to know.
I don't remember. I think it's 3X, like the number 3 and then an X. Yeah.
Pro. I'm a pro member. I can't. I haven't masturbated in 3 weeks.
Oh my god. So, okay.
Do you like log your like every time you touch? Is there like
it's still a thing?
Please tell me you can. Oh my god. She's showing it to me on the screen and I am dying. Empowering sexual integrity through mental well-being. What? Okay, so please tell me that the subscription comes with like a journal where you just enter like, I touched myself again today.
I mean, there's join a small group, which I'm assuming is virtual. Find my small group.
I shouldn't be laughing because this is actually terrible and like awful. And
oh, hey, they've
in this.
They've expanded.
I can't.
They've expanded because it used to only be for men, but now you can select a group for women. So
what the fuck? Okay, whoa, hold shit. There are women out there who struggle with like porn addiction and masturbate because
all right.
I thought it was only the men that ever touched themselves. This is wild information to me. Women are sexual beings?
It's so weird, right?
Brand new news.
Okay, true story time.
Somebody call the press.
Yeah. When I was in seminary, right, I had a friend, female, who actually like they understood that some men would struggle with pornography, and they had like you can come forward and talk to an advisor and get help through the school to help with your addiction, right? Which is weird in and of itself. But I had a friend.
Talk to this adult about your pornography addiction. That's not weird.
I mean, we were adults. It was seminary, so
okay.
In my 20s. The person was in his 50s who was there for the seminary, which is, yeah. Normal. Anyways, female friend went and brought forward the fact that she enjoyed pornography, and they had no idea what to do. The response was...
Did they make her wear a scarlet letter A?
No, they didn't. But literally, they just said, I am not aware of any women who have this struggle, and I don't know what to do. And they didn't provide her with help.
I died.
This is...
So she became a porn star, and she is me. Is that where this is going?
I mean, she ended up like... during the summer break, I think she met somebody and got married and didn't come back. But it's like still, but
I wouldn't come back.
I mean, it's fair. Like that, it was a good decision. You probably didn't need to come back to the seminary, but
nope.
It's still like I don't know. I mean, it was over a decade ago, so like. It's been a while, but like at that time, they had no concept of the fact that women might enjoy pornography.
Right.
It's just men.
No, that's a totally new phenomenon. I had no idea that women like to watch stuff. Men are visual beings. Women just like, we have feelings and we get turned on if you help us in the kitchen. That was what I understood was supposed to happen to me.
Yeah. Actually, let's take a moment and talk about that, because that goes into our entire shame topic. Because, as you've admitted, you do enjoy a nice set of boobies.
Oh, oh man, I love a nice set of boobies. I love a mean set of boobies. I love all the boobies.
All the boobies. However, you were also shamed into if you, my chair's squeaking. You're also shamed into like, if you enjoyed something visual, then that's not feminine, that's masculine, and you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. That's true. It's true. And also just, I think for me, it was just kind of like, I was a weirdo. Like it was just like really weird, the idea that like a woman would want to do that. And I think by the time I started wanting to look at titties, like I had a concept that there were more of us out there that wanted to watch porn, but I also still assumed that I would want to watch like a lot of straight porn. And so when I found myself just constantly Googling like titty drops, like all I wanted to do was see some titties fall out of a shirt, I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? I was so confused, so baffled. I was like, maybe I'm just jealous because her boobs are so nice.
Yeah, maybe. But also titty drops are They're so nice.
Oh my God, they're so nice. And like it's so funny because then eventually, I got onto the internet and I found these forums where it's like, am I a lesbian and I don't know about it? And one of the things on there, on one of these lists that I found, I think it was, oh God, it must have been a Reddit forum or something, but it was like, if you're questioning it, this might be a sign. One of them was like, have you always just spent an inordinate amount of time like staring at women's bodies, like not being able to look away and just telling yourself, oh, I'm jealous? And I was like, oops. I was like, oh, that wasn't jealousy. I get it. Like,
So yeah. So what's funny about that is like the sometimes the trans experience is like the exact opposite of that. Being
yeah.
trans, I do enjoy women's bodies, but at the same time, I also very much would want the feminine body as well. So like there was a kind of jealousy aspect to it. But because I was conditioned to think that anything like that was just, some type of sexual, I don't know, sometimes sexual inclination, that I must just be, kind of perverted and just hypersexual. And that's all it is. And so like
and you're just really attracted to women. You're not jealous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I'm just jealous. I'm not attracted to women. Like, I love it. I don't love it.
The inverse experience right there.
It's wild. Yeah. Another thing on that list was like, if you like look at queer people and you're like, oh my God, they're so cool. I wish I could be one of them. They were like, you might be. And I was like, oh shit. Yeah. Does that mean I'm in the club? I was so excited.
When you get excited at the idea that you might be queer, you're probably queer.
Probably queer. I was so excited. I was like, wait, am I in? Can I get, like, is there a membership card? Will people recognize me as one of the queers? Like, yeah, it was a very exciting time in my life.
Is there a queer St. Peter at the gates of queerness heaven that has to let me in? Is
right there with our queer sex worker friend Paul, alongside David and Jonathan, who are still madly in love and won't stop making out on top of the pearly gates. Someone stop them. This is getting obscene.
Oh my God. Anyways, back to the sexual shame. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, the video I wanted to show you. I can't find it anywhere. If people are listening and you've seen this video, like I know I've seen it. It was like back in college, but I can't be the only person who like remembers this video. It's like this nice like it like soft, like gentle music, and it's like every time that you touch yourself or every time that you masturbate, God kills a kitten.
Are you serious?
I'm so serious.
Oh my God. Those fluids are actually the tears of angels.
But yeah, like it was this entire thing. Every time you masturbate, God kills a kitten.
God kills a kitten. So did you legit think like every time you came that a kitten somewhere died?
No, I mean, I knew that it was a joke, but at the same time, like
it's so funny.
It was like the shame was to a point where they like made a joke about the fact that you felt ashamed of it, and like you're kind of supposed to feel ashamed about it. Because
yeah, it's so funny.
Oh my goodness, how did we make it out of this? Like
I don't know.
In some reasonable sense.
I don't even know. How did we get so cool? God damn. People are like, who made you? And I'm like, I did. I had to work really hard at this.
Yeah,
actually.
I did.
Yeah. No, it feels like one of those situations, like you masturbate and cry, and then you're just like, I do believe in kittens. I do. I can just.
Oh my God.
I'm just like, seriously.
So much.
The way that I'm like, I almost feel badly for like laughing about some of this stuff, and then I remember that like I'm laughing at my own trauma, and I'm like, oh,
Oh
okay.
yeah, that's definitely what's going on. Like we should not find this funny. We should find this kind of horrific that, teenagers are being taught that God is killing kittens if they masturbate.
Oh, it's absolutely
Like,
horrifying. The part of it that's funny is that adults are I like adults who think that they're reasonable are making kids think that essentially if they masturbate, God's gonna kill a kitten or yeah,
yeah.
like that's what's I'm like, where had that who raised you? Like, I would like a
But
word.
at the same time, though, like the implications are actually worse than God killing a kitten, because what they're actually teaching you besides that is masturbating can send you to hell. So when we really think about it, it's God killing a kitten is actually nicer than what we were actually taught, which was hell. It was hell.
It's true. I guess, yeah. It's if just you're gonna be really crispy. But I don't did you also get the side of the theology at all that I eventually got into this as I got a little bit older, then suddenly there was a concept of like the God of grace, and it was like, oh, okay, well, you can say you're sorry later and he'll forgive you though. Like you don't have to go to hell for it. It's wrong and you have to feel guilty about it, but like you don't necessarily have to burn for it. Like you can apologize later.
Um
Did you ever get the God's not
so
going to send you to hell for sinning theology where it's like
kind of, but like you have to, ask for forgiveness and repent, and you have to mean it. And that
uh-huh.
was the thing. Like I was always told, you have to mean it when you ask for forgiveness of your sins. But but you're also like told that like continuous action means you don't actually mean it. And so the fact that I would still end up masturbating was like indication that I didn't actually mean that I was sorry, and that I wasn't actually forgiven. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
yeah.
Because I kind of got the like that temptation that you have is like an affliction, and it's like the devil is trying to tempt you and like this thing that's happening to you. And so it was convenient for me because I did have a really heavy conscience, and in the moment if I was like, meh, I'll feel guilty about this later, I really would feel guilty about it later. So I could
Yeah.
genuinely repent. And I was like, the devil made me do it, Like,
I mean, I probably would have come out just a little bit better if maybe I was given that, but I don't know, and maybe I was extra hard on myself, but I
well,
mostly remember.
I think you came out great, first of all. I think that needs to be said, but I know what you mean. Okay, continue.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing that really resonated with me was like the continuous act meant that you weren't repenting. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was, yeah.
I mean, it's true that the best apology is changed behavior. But like maybe the problem is that we're not designed to repent of our own pleasure.
Yeah, like masturbating in and of itself is not harmful. In fact, it's kind of a good thing. It's I think especially for people with vaginas, it's definitely a good thing, because having had both, there's a little more work with a vagina than with a penis. So
Yeah.
there is a little bit of a different learning curve going on with that. Guys figure it out so quickly. Or people with penises figure it out really quickly.
Yeah. I do think it's important if it's something that you're compelled to do. If you're like, oh, I really don't want to, or it doesn't feel good to me, like I'm gonna tell you that you have to.
Yeah, don't do it. Don't do
But
it.
for me, I do think that masturbation is an important thing for us to allow that kind of exploration, because it it is not, first of all, like it's none of our business. Like it's weird for me to be so worried about whether or not a teenager is masturbating. Like that's gross and weird.
Yeah.
And like, why am I thinking about whether or not they're touching themselves? Like, it's their body, and like they probably are. Because like, do you ever touch your like any part of yourself? Are you ever like, oh, my elbow feels interesting today? Like, well, it's your body, you know. And so I think that I think it the th- when the thing that is keeping us from touching ourselves is shame based or rules based or whatever, when we're resisting it, versus like, if you don't want to, don't do it, but when you're resisting that, i think
Mm-hmm.
i think it sets you up to, we talked about like being othered from our own bodies. It really does set you up to other yourself, because there's a whole experience, I think, of accepting, like, this is who I am and this is my body, and I'm going to figure out how it works and what works for
Mm-hmm.
me. And there's this level of self-love, and a lot of times, like, when people are masturbating, even, you know, you masturbate for different reasons than you might have sex with a partner, right? Like, it might be stress relief, it might be a million things. It's a form of self-care. A lot of times it's a way of saying like,
Yeah.
oh, I had this feeling that I wanted this thing, and I'm going to give it to myself. And that's, I think, it's important to have that kind of connection with yourself, where you can hear, oh, I'm hungry, so I'm going to feed myself. Oh, I want
Mm-hmm.
this thing, so I'm going to give myself the good thing. And the only time we should be questioning that is when it's causing harm to someone else. But when it comes to masturbation, like, you're the only one who can consent or not. And like, I think that we need to allow people's relationships with themselves and with their own bodies to really develop organically, because when we stunt that, we stunt the potential for every other relationship that they're ever going to have, because it all starts with our relationship with ourselves.
And kind of on top of that is the fact that this shame type of ethic around sexuality actually increases a lot of people's chances of being the victim of sexual abuse and sexual assault. And research has shown that. There is research showing that people given shame sexual ethics are more prone to sexual abuse.
Oh yeah.
Part of that is the fact that you are told to be shamed of your body, of the way you use your body, and that your body is meant it's meant to be given to somebody else, and that is so easily exploited.
There are so many layers to that too, because when something abusive happens to you, if your thought is, oh my God, I tempted him with my body, or, you know, whatever, your first response to that is guilt. Whenever, you know, someone comes in and is touching you in certain ways, you haven't, because you're not allowed to talk about your body, or like you might not realize what's appropriate as quickly. And because everything about your body is cloaked in shame, if someone says don't tell anyone, and you feel that this was sinful or that
Mhm.
you should feel guilty, then you also feel that you have sinned. This happened to your body, so you have sinned, and now you can't tell anyone, because there's also that level of shame. And so there's so many, like, you tempted him and you should feel ashamed of that. You also sinned by, you know, because you were touched in this way, and so you should be ashamed of that. This is a secret, and we keep secrets about our bodies. That's what we do here. Like,
Mhm.
it all becomes very natural, this really secretive culture around sex, and that is the perfect breeding ground for predators. A culture where we are really, really secretive about sex, and we don't teach our children like what is appropriate touch, what isn't, what this feeling in your body means, and if you feel this feeling, it's probably your instincts telling you that something's off, or you should tell me about X, Y, and Z. You know, um,
Yeah.
it's a breeding ground for predators, and I think that's one of the reasons that we do see a lot of predatory behavior within these circles. Predators know that. They
Yeah.
understand that there's a group trust here, and also a level of hush hush, where they can get away with more, get away with
Yeah.
different things than they could in a world where children are not conditioned in such a way.
Yeah, and on top of that, and like I'd mentioned before, shame sexual ethics also leads to people being more prone to being a sexual predator, because like we said at the beginning of this episode, the shame feeling becomes part of the sexual pleasure feeling. Those two end up being connected in our brain. We're wiring our brain to enjoy sexuality with shame. And on top of that, we don't have like a robust sexual ethic that says that like understands that there's levels of like crossing a line. So if your line is looking at pornography, and you cross that line, that's still nowhere near like having child sexual abuse material. Like there's still a jump there. But if you're conditioned that no, every sin is the same, right? And you cross that line and now you're into sin, like you're already looking at porn. There's not necessarily anything worse, looking at an adult versus a child, but there is.
Yep.
And so like not having a developed understanding
just being told
of like
that every single bit of this is immoral and not building any sort of ethic around it just means that like, well, it's all the same kind of immoral. What does it matter how I sin?
Exactly.
That's really dangerous. I also think that if we understand trauma, there are a lot of there's evidence out there that a lot of people, when they have like a really traumatic experience, in a lot of ways, their brain can get kind of frozen and stuck in that moment or at that age, emotionally, whatever, around that issue until they've dealt with it. And so I think about, the teenage boys that I knew who's like, let's say dad walked in on them searching for something on the computer for, the first or 12th time. I don't even know. It could be. And dad just like lost his mind and made the child, like this kid made him so scared and made him feel so ashamed and made him feel so, and now there's this fear around it and there's this repression that they're trying to do for years and years and years. And I feel like I have seen adults get really kind of stuck sexually, just when they then go back to that stuff and they eventually can't repress it, the way that they jump in, the anger and the shame and the fact that their brain is still like undeveloped and how to deal with it. Like I see adults find themselves in places that I'm like, you should know this should not but they've been repressing that urge since they were 16, so maybe they still have it. Like I don't. And yeah,
it creates a cycle of harm is really what happens. And now that you're talking about it, I don't know if there's any research on it. I know I didn't think to like search it, but I'm wondering, because I know that like micro traumas are a thing. So I'm really curious if our brain registers like looking at porn whenever you believe that it's a sin and shaming yourself, if that triggers like a micro trauma in that experience. And if it does, then that's going to create pathways. I don't know. I like to me, it makes a lot of sense. And I assume that it's actually correct, but I don't know of any research out there. Regardless, like it creates a cycle of harmful sexual behavior that doesn't have a way to reel itself in, and so it very easily gets out of control. And it's one of the reasons I'm rather convinced why pastors are one of the most likely people to commit sexual crimes. And the statistics back it up. Yep. Like I did research on it, like compared it with public school teachers on like people who are arrested, and pastors are roughly 10 times that of school teachers. And it's not even close. But the problem is like we don't necessarily keep statistics on occupation of people who are charged with sexual violence. So you kind of have to go, they do keep research sometimes on teachers because that is a public profession, but pastor is not. So it's hard, but that honestly means that it's under connected with the
I was
role.
gonna say that's all that does is make it look even. Ugh. Yeah.
Also, in the school systems, a lot of school systems are like mandatory reporters.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of churches are not.
Is that so?
Yes.
That's fascinating because when I worked in youth ministry for a while, I was a mandated reporter. And I was
It
told that
depends
up
on the
front.
state.
So that's really interesting. Oh, it's state based. Okay.
State. Yes. So like Pacific Northwest or West Coast, all of those are mandatory reporters. I don't know if Idaho is. I don't think Idaho is. But like I believe Texas isn't. There is a handful of states where the
Yikes.
clergy are not mandatory reporters. And honestly, for the longest time in the military, the
I
chaplains
guarantee
did.
you the predatory ones know which state those are too. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
sorry.
In the military, for most of the time that I was in it, the chaplain was the only person that wasn't a mandatory reporter. And as long as you didn't tell the chaplain that you are going to kill somebody right now, they couldn't do anything about it. Which think about that. Like the military is not necessarily where you need people that are exempt from reporting sexual assault, because that is a place where there's a lot.
Oh my God.
Also,
I'm sorry. I'm my brain. Ouch.
the military does not recognize spousal rape. It classifies it as domestic violence.
What?
It's not a sexual crime.
Doesn't like federal law recognize spousal rape?
So you can't.
Or is it state?
Yes, I believe it's federal law. So in the military, you could be charged by the military if you're a service member, and you can be charged by civil authorities. But it doesn't. Yeah. So
you can't be charged by the military for that, or you'll be charged for domestic whatever.
Domestic violence, and yeah.
Call it what it is, you cowards. I want to say bad words. Anyway. It do be like that though. When you hand down an ethic of shame, it's then all of your sexuality is wrapped up in shame. Then what does it matter? I mean, it's just and it doesn't mean that everyone who comes from that culture ends up going in the direction of being predatory. Obviously, we didn't. Not. Yeah. For some of us, the direction we go is just really curious and really confused and maybe really stunted. And maybe there's a lot of stuff that we have to work through and we need therapy around. And maybe we don't even realize that we're a lesbian until we're like 30 and then you have to like tear down our entire lives. But I don't know anything about that. That's never happened to me. Wink, wink. So, obviously we're not saying that this ethic, this way of looking at things just breeds nothing but predators, but it's definitely, there are so many reasons why, if we're looking at, the way that we think and talk about sex, that this shame-filled lens contributes to more damage and more harm. And it's, no matter how you slice it, it's psychologically harmful for all people, but especially for young people, to tell them that everything about their relationship with their body is dirty and gross and sinful. And so I think that we can take that understanding into the way that we interact with kind of the entire world and with the way that we present consent and that we present bodies. So, mostly we talk about, within this world, breaking down walls of shame. And Alicia and I are already doing a ton of that. Those of you who subscribe to our OnlyFans know all the things. But also, like, out there in that really practical world, for those of you who are listening, I think about talking to our children about things like, hey, this sort if you feel weird when somebody touches you, you can always tell them to stop, and please tell mom or tell dad, tell someone. If someone, if you don't want to hug someone, you don't have to. If you want to hug someone else, you need to ask first. If you like, no one except for mommy or daddy should ever ask you to take your clothes off, and that should only be at bath time. And no one should ever, like, all of these things about no adult should ever tell you to keep a secret. Like, telling them that they can talk about these things with you. You should talk to me about it. If something happens to your body that feels weird to you, you should tell me about it. You should, and just beginning there, and then not making them feel weird. If they have a question, you just say, that's what a body does. Like, we don't have to. I think there are so many ways that we can just kind of make bodies and like,
and bring it up. If you are a parent or a guardian of a younger person, and that's your responsibility to help them understand their own bodies. So, parents is what I'm getting here, but I'm trying to be a little more expansive if there are like other, bring it up yourself. You don't wait for a child to bring something up, because if you aren't bringing it up, they're going to feel like it's an off-limit topic. And that's just another aspect of shame. If our children aren't able to come to us and say, hey, this is what's going on, or this happened to me, because they feel like it's an off-limits topic, then that's just such a big gap that needs to be filled. Because
I know that what people think that they're doing is protecting their children from engaging in things like too young that they're not ready for, from knowing things, that there's this like protective stance of like, I want to keep my kid from knowing anything. But it's actually, it's the
it sets them up for harm.
It does set them up for harm, and it's not protective. It's not. If kids are gonna learn this stuff somewhere. People are gonna learn this stuff somewhere. They're going to develop a relationship with their body somewhere. And so to just try, these people, the people who live this way, the idea is that we're trying not to expose them to sexual thought and not to expose them to adult things. But what you're actually doing is over sexualizing them. You're setting them up as tiny adults. You're assuming that everything about their relationship with their body at this age is sexual. You're never even giving them the lens from a young age to say like, oh yeah, that naturally happens to, your body sometime in the morning. It's fine. It'll go away if you stop thinking about it. And like, oh, honey, if you're going to touch yourself like that, like you need to do that in private. You need to go in your bedroom. Okay. That's not for anyone else to see. Oh, babe, we do not like take off our clothes in front of guests. Like you need to go put on a whatever. Like it's, we have to, you're over sexualizing them when you assume that everything is about sexuality. It's also the very first seeds of that, before anything sexual ever happens, before they ever feel a tingle, is just their relationship with their body. How it feels to climb a tree, how it feels to whatever. Like we have to stop over sexualizing children. And that's what we're doing with this culture of shame, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I've said it before, any pastor who gets up and says anything about like girls shouldn't wear skirts too short or shouldn't wear spaghetti strap tank tops, they are sexualizing children.
Absolutely.
And a lot of times,
she did not invite you to look at her shoulders, and the fact that you are calling out the fact that like, hey, young girls, your shoulders are really sexy and you should cover them up. That is so wildly inappropriate and uncomfortable.
So inappropriate. Also, you're teaching others that if somebody is wearing a spaghetti strap, that you should sexualize them because you were taught by a person of authority that shoulders are sexual. And so as a red-blooded male with urges or whatever, I don't know, you should be seeing those as sexual. There's nothing sexual about shoulders,
And
but we do sexualize them.
The understanding is that if you wear that, then you're tempting them. And so it doesn't sound weird to you when a grown man says to a 15-year-old, your shoulders are too sexy, you need to cover them up. But that's fucking weird for an adult to look at a 15-year-old and think your shoulders are really sexy. They should be covered. Yeah.
Or your skirt should go down to your knees.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Because anything above your knees gives way too much access to your vagina.
And absolutely, like, teach your children about, like, you know, which parts of themselves are just for them. That's part of the conversation, right? But
Yeah,
like
that
a
is.
skirt that has to be down to your knees because like somebody saw 2 inches above your knee and thought that that was too sexy and suddenly couldn't control himself. Like my body is just something that makes people lose control of themselves. And that's not even weird, even if a grown man is saying it. Like that's okay. No, like it's very predatory culture in general. That whole, yeah. Ooh, buddy.
Well, I think this episode has had some highs and some, well, I don't want to say lows because I think that it was still good conversation, but like some lighthearted things and some deeper conversations that still need to happen.
Some stuff to really think about. Yeah. I love that we're just like starting the conversations. We obviously can't have the full conversations about all of these things here, but I love opening them up. And now I'm going to be reflecting as well. More to learn, always.
But yeah, if you ever felt like, this shame stuff was like, seemed really bad. Yeah, you're right. The research backs it up.
Yep.
It's like people are taking notice that having a shame-based sexual ethic leads to harm. A lot of harm.
It's one thing to correct someone and say, hey, this is wrong. But if someone is trying to make you feel shame, trying to like manipulate you into feeling shame about something, it's always a good idea to stop and ask the question of like who that shame is benefiting.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, that is our time for this episode.
That's all,
I think it was a good one.
It was a good one. It's been great. Thanks for listening, y'all. So great to share this with you. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next week on Not Safe for Worship.